Hi, everybody. We are the Wildlife Wire, and we are back with another special episode. This is going to be our second developer interview that we've done. And just before we get into it a little bit, we've been seeing that quite a few of our videos are getting more successful, so I guess I have to now do the classic YouTube, make sure if you enjoy our content that you like and subscribe so that we know to keep doing this stuff. So that is my reminder. My other reminder here is that I am Dominic. I received my bachelor's degree in wildlife biology from the University of Montana, and I currently do work with small and medium-sized carnivores in New York.
And I'm Justin Ruby, also got my bachelor's in wildlife biology from the University of Montana, and currently working in education.
And we have two very special guests today. We have Matt and Zara, who are the developers of the board game company Mazaza Games, and they are going to be having their first board game Kavango hitting the market hopefully soon. It was fully funded on Kickstarter. We're very excited to talk to them about it. And there it is. There's the prototype itself. Very, very exciting.
Hi guys,
Hi.
Very excited to be here.
Yeah,
I'm
thank
Matt.
you for having us. I'm Zara. Lovely to be on your
Lovely to be on your show.
On your show.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you guys because we mostly been covering video games, but I think it was just some like sheer luck basically where I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but it just so happened with the Facebook algorithm that ads for Kavango kept popping up.
Yeah.
And I was
That's
just like,
all
right, I'll look into it. I'm not a huge board game person, and then I like look into it, and I'm just astounded. I'm like, this looks amazing. I can see these gameplay elements in Southern Africa,
nice.
particularly the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier region is very near and dear to my heart. So that really pulled me along as well. And so it was like, is this going to be the board game that gets me back into playing board games? I think it is.
Wow, what an honor.
So, yeah, I'm very excited, and it's kind of opened up another, sort of media avenue for us on this channel. So it's exciting.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, we remember the video.
Yeah,
We
video.
found your video.
So exciting.
And we just couldn't believe it. I remember the moment Matt was like, oh, there's this guy and he's done a video of Kavango and he's never played it, but he's just gone through it, all the reviews and all the images, and he's made this incredible video of it, commenting on the wildlife, and he gets it and he understands the region, and we were just so excited. And we couldn't believe that you'd done it. So 100%. It's so lovely to have this conversation
that
with
video
you.
in particular, it was like I guess, like, to give kind of a comparison for people, especially when certain games come out, especially Planet Zoo, for example, which is the main video game that we cover, very often when those types of games are announced or there's a new DLC or something like that, people always are trying to figure out what's the roster, who made it in, who's not made it in, who do we think's going to make it in, and so that was kind of the initial take with that video, trying to figure out, all right, who got picked. I did not expect to find all 160 animals, but sure enough, I did. And so as I kept going, and what really helped out was in some of the pre-release videos, there was the key. And so I was able to be like, okay, I know how many of each type there's going to be. And then there was some things where I saw, okay, there's this many carnivores, and then I thought it was just going to be like Carnivora as a taxonomic group, and then I was like, wait, no, it can't be, there's too many of them, and then I realized, things like bad-eared fox was the big one for me, because I initially put it in carnivores, then I put it in medium mammals, and then I was like, I have too many medium mammals and too few small mammals, what's going on here? And then I saw it, I looked at the bad-eared fox again, I'm like, oh, of course it's this one. But yeah, that was just kind of, it was a video that I just really wanted to slap together because I was excited about it, and the Kickstarter was still ongoing even though you guys had reached your funding goal, but there were still so many stretch goals, such as the climate mini expansion, and I mean, you guys had a heck of a campaign. It really felt like you guys never stopped growing in terms of the funds guys got.
Yeah, it was so fun to do it. I think we planned it quite well actually in hindsight, because we had 2 expos in the middle of it. So we went to Comic-Con in South Africa, and that was so nice. It was because there were so many people really familiar with the wildlife and just loving the game and going, oh, it's so nice to have a game that represents Southern Africa. Yeah. And then we had a couple of weeks later we had Essen, which is just total opposite, just absolutely enormous and all pure board gamers, and again that was absolutely amazing. Just non-stop playthroughs, non-stop demos, people just loving the game, and it was so exciting. And I think it just really helped keep the momentum with the Kickstarter, because we were just so busy.
It was amazing. And it also just made it seem so real to us, because I think when we were just not at the expos, we were just sort of watching it, like hoping that people would see our ads, but it felt like we could really control it in a way that when we were at the expos and we could show the game to people and let them play it and tell them the story behind it, and it was just really motivating. You get such a buzz from actually playing the game with people and bouncing off their energy and their reaction to it. So it was so much fun. It's hard to believe that it's over, because we spent so long preparing for it. But no, it did really well, and thank you for your support as well.
No, I mean, just looking at the promotional material, I'm just like, I just want to play the game now. Like, can I play the game?
I know, we're lucky we get to play it all the time, but it's so funny, we just love it as well. We play it all the time, and with all of our friends, we're like, do you want to just come round and play Kavango? And we got the latest prototype last week, so that's just been so exciting.
I'm sure it just makes it feel even more of a reality that it's gonna hit the market.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
it's the final prototype before it goes into mass production. So it will go into mass production in a couple of weeks, which is just unbelievable, really. 'Cause when it all started, it's just the changing of the goalposts as you go. So we just started it thinking, it'd be nice if a few people play it and we can teach people a bit more about conservation and do something good with it. And then as we introduced it to more people, they were saying, this is really good, you should do something with it. And then the goalposts keep on shifting. And now that we've had a really successful Kickstarter and we're looking to retail beyond that, it's just it all feels a bit unreal. And the idea of it going to mass production in a couple of weeks, just can't really get our head around that.
I know. Crazy.
Yeah. Well, to start off, I do have a couple of questions that I've written down. My first one is just because it's been in a lot of the advertisement. Zara, it's always mentioned kind of offhand that you have a job in conservation, specifically with combating illegal wildlife trade, and then it just never seems to go into any additional detail. And I'm going to be the person that I'm sure there's some secret stuff because of how those types of jobs work, and you're combating poachers and things like that. But like, how much can you tell us about
it's really not
your job and how it contributes to protecting wildlife?
Yeah, so I was working in that job for 4 years, and I've started a new job in December working on marine conservation. So but when I was working on that job, we really tried to combat the illegal wildlife trade in lots of different ways. So it wasn't just going in with, for example, like a militarized approach or trying to increase prosecutions or strengthen law enforcement. It was trying to do it holistically. So a big part of that is poverty alleviation and development of communities that are living alongside nature as well. So there's loads of different programs and projects that fed into an overall aim to try and reduce poaching. And alongside that, really a big factor is working with people and communities on the ground, because that's really the key. We can't really talk about it without talking about community engagement and helping raise people up in terms of poverty and livelihoods, because people don't necessarily want to be out there poaching. Sometimes it's a necessity, either for food or just for money. And we can't really judge in a way because we don't understand all the complexities that make up their life and all the difficulties that are in there as well. So we just try and go in and understand and bring people up. And then there is a lot as well on strengthening law enforcement and helping in that way to try and deter people from poaching. If you can strengthen the law enforcement systems and the judicial frameworks, then hopefully people will be less inclined to do it because the consequences will be more severe. But it's a really complicated issue, and it's tied up with so many different complexities. But I mean, I had an amazing time and working in that field, and just think that there's so much hope. And I think that's really the message that we're trying to give with Kavango, is that although there's a lot of doom and gloom globally about biodiversity and the environment, there are so many people out there motivated and passionate and willing to give up, you know, their life's work to try and help this situation. So I think I was just inspired all the time doing that job and traveling around the region in Southern Africa, working on it, by all the people that I met and all the projects that I saw, and just people's love for nature. And yeah, that's kind of what Kavango is as well. It's meant to be an inspiring message of hope about the future of wildlife and conservation in Southern Africa. So yeah, we hope that people will play it and learn a bit more about conservation, and also be a bit inspired, I don't know, to protect biodiversity near them, not just overseas, or if you've got a garden, or you can engage with your local wildlife. All of that is really positive as well. So yeah, I don't know if is that what you wanted to know?
Yeah, no, this is exactly, and I think it's really cool that you brought up the emphasis on local collaboration and kind of the community conservancy program that a lot of these Southern African countries have done. I know Namibia was the first one, but then it's kind of spread throughout that region. And it's all stuff that I learned when I was in Botswana, and it was just so commendable. And it's just such a huge difference in culture compared to back home in the United States. I'm sure it's very different to the UK as well. And just the ideas that these people have towards wildlife and living close to wildlife, even, if they're, less financially sound, and really trying to get all that balance together. It is just very inspiring, especially when you're there on the ground, and those people, lovely to work with a lot of the time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, everyone's just so... everyone that we met along the way was just wonderful. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really
so
where
good.
the game came from, was about telling those inspirational stories and that message of hope, really, because I think before that we although we both love wildlife and very involved with it, the narrative was always a bit negative, and then we thought, wow, actually there's so many stories of people actually really proactively building and improving biodiversity and nature, even, as you say, in situations that are not easy. I mean, by comparison, in the UK, people might be angry if a fox comes into their garden, whereas in Botswana, you're dealing with elephants destroying your farms, or like lions coming in and attacking your livestock, for example. And it's a totally different level, and yet people have such a profound respect and love for wildlife at the same time. And it was just really inspiring, and we just wanted to promote that story, really.
Yeah. No, one of the things that I really liked was, I think it's because you have in the game the choice to play as these different human characters, and the different human characters kind of give you different abilities based on what you want to do. And I really like that the local leader was giving you extra habitat protection, and in the sense that they just have such a strong impact to that general area that other people are gonna listen to them with respect, and that was always a big thing that I noticed when I was in Southern Africa.
You get what we're trying to do. I love it. It's so good. The conservation experts were so important for us because we wanted to highlight how many people are needed to make conservation work. That you can't just come in and with obviously money is really important, so the investors there, but the community is also incredibly important and vital, and that's why the local leaders there. But then you also need international agreements and international frameworks that help with biodiversity. So we have the diplomat, and then we also have the vet, because you need people to care for the wildlife or protect it. So there's just all these different people that we tried to capture in the conservation experts, as we've called them. And to do that, we really were trying to tell a story of all the different pieces of a puzzle that are needed to make conservation work. And that's the educational aspect. So it's so nice to hear you say that you've picked up on that and that you saw it and recognised it.
And you've not even played it yet.
You've not even played it yet. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I guess following into my next question is, you know, the amount of trying to implement the conservation messages into the gameplay, and, you know, how much did you have to kind of, you know, was it a lot of just experience from your job, or was there additional research that you kind of had to do, or were there certain moments where it was basically like, we want to showcase this within the gameplay, but we don't have it quite right, and you spend a little bit of extra time trying to figure out how to get it just right? Any moments like that?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of an iterative process. There were times that we... Actually, I think the conservation experts have been the same the whole way through. We've added a few as we've gone along. We've thought, oh yeah, we really need that person, they should be included. But yeah, I think each one has been based off different people we've met, really, and the role that they're playing within conservation. And because the game is so thematic generally, it's actually... it's always fitted in quite well. There's been a few where we thought, oh, how do we include them? And it's been a bit more tricky. But generally speaking, as you say, with the local leader, it's like, well, their role is... It just seemed obvious that they're in charge of, you know, making sure that the boundaries and frameworks are in place to protect the land. So therefore, they're protecting the habitat for your nature reserve, and then the ranger working for poaching protection, and a lot of them just because it was designed to be so thematic, they kind of just fell into place. So yeah, and lots of playtesting and tweaking as well, obviously.
Did you mean also about other mechanisms that we were developing in the game?
Yeah, I guess kind of, because one thing that I really like about it too is just, because I noticed this just depending on who makes different animal or wildlife themed games, is what I really like is the fact that it's focusing kind of on like ecosystem integrity, where it's certain species are worth X amount of value points, whether that's ecological value or popularity value, just because that seems to be a rare use of animal species in a lot of games, and especially like games kind of more physical like this, where instead it's more geared towards combat or fighting or things like that. And so, you know, the decision to really hammer in on the conservation aspect and give the species different value from that side of things is something that I really like to see instead of the fighting side.
Yeah, definitely. I think...
And that took you did a lot of research on that one.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of things that were really difficult to balance from that side. I think this was probably... Sorry if I misinterpreted your previous question, but yeah, this was probably the most difficult bit of balancing the game, actually, and probably what took longest. And as you notice when you're going through the 160 different species, is that obviously the actual dynamic of the ecosystem isn't that you have the same number of carnivores as you have a species of carnivores as you have species of insects. That would be ridiculous. But we wanted to create a biodiverse ecosystem and also have the iconic species in there without having thousands of different invertebrates and thousands of different fish. And we thought, right, well, how can we do this? So it was the representation in the game is that each time you introduce a species, it represents the sustainable population of that species. And the idea there would be that a lot of animals are actually quite specialist in terms of their diets. So, for example, I mean, the obvious example is with the animals that eat termites. So obviously, there's thousands of different species of termites, but some of them are even quite specific in types of termites they eat. So it was trying to narrow down and think, right, how can we reduce the number of different types of species? And by having animals that build up from the same producers. So in the game, I think you'll probably also notice that we had to include invertebrates and fish as producers. So the idea being that they're just building blocks of the ecosystem, even though that of course they're not producers. You both as biologists would think, oh no,
it's wrong.
Yeah, so
we've given a note on it in the rulebook, just to clarify.
Yeah,
that
it's
we
in
know
the
what
appendix.
A producer is.
Well, it's a lot easier to put bugs in a place than a lion, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
It achieves the same.
Yeah, that was quite a tough decision, because earlier versions of the game we had the invertebrates and fish as animals, and then it just took way too long to build up, and you didn't get that fulfilling sense of, oh, I've got a giraffe, and oh, I've got a lion. So it just didn't interact with people well enough. So this way I think we've got a nice balance of people appreciating how you build an ecosystem with the different plant species, invertebrates and so on, but also getting to what a lot of people will see as the more exciting part, where they're playing the highest scoring iconic species. So that was a really tough balance. And the other thing that was tough about that was how to categorize all the different species. So that was a balance of, right, we can't have too many different types, but how on earth are we going to categorize these wonderfully different 160 species into just 11 categories? And there were some really tough decisions to make in there. I think Dominic, you noticed that the polecat I put in as a predator rather than a small mammal, for example, but the marabou stork controversially put in as a bird of prey rather than a normal bird. But there were some interesting calls to be made there, but it was generally based on with the animals anyway, it was based on whether or not they're likely to be predated on, and therefore be an important prey species for animals higher up the food chain. So an animal like the marabou stork, it's more likely to be towards the top of the food chain than somewhere in the middle. So that was the decision making there. But again, an animal like a wildcat we've included as a predator in the game, so animals that are predators in the game have no predators. And of course a wildcat does have predators. I mean, a leopard will predate on it, but we thought it's not really an important prey species compared to, say, a steenbok or an impala. So that was the basis for those categorizations. But yeah, I think honestly, if you two were sitting down with us whilst we were categorizing those, you'd have absolutely loved it. It was really really fun to do, but it was really difficult.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can always joke about how, like, in this game, like, I can sustain a boom slang off of an ostrich population, but, like, at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. So, part of that is just, like, it's a game. Like, I get the general feel. Like, I'm not going to be too critical of something like that. There's only so much that you can do while making it simple and enjoyable.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But what we found is really lovely, all the different landscape boards, so we've got 5, and they're all like different colours, and they're all inspired by different places in Kavango, Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. They're all different habitats. And what we found when we were playtesting it initially is that they all start with different starting resources. So for example, like the riverine forest starts with a tree and a fish. And if you lean into that and you start building up an ecosystem that's heavily based around your starting producers, we found that people were making their landscape board reserves look like the areas that inspired them, which was really, really lovely. So we would see, like, people would be playing in sort of riverine forest, and we would think, okay, that looks like Chobe National Park.
Yeah.
And then, or they'd be playing in the savannah, and we'd be like, okay, yeah, that looks a bit like the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. Like, those are the type of animals that we would actually want to see there. So it was really amazing, because as you saw people lean into it, it replicated life, and that was when we kind of thought, okay, this does probably work quite well now. That was a pretty nice moment.
It's one of our favourite things to do when we finish the game. We sort of stand up and look at each person's board, and we try and guess which which area within Kavango that would be if it was real. Based on, sometimes people will have loads of different reptiles and amphibians, and sometimes someone will have like a bird sanctuary, and someone else will just have all the antelopes, and and maybe a lion and a hyena as well. And it's really, really fun to go, oh yeah, I reckon that's probably there, whereas this one might be, you know, this place.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really nice to be able to do that.
Justin, do you have a question?
Yes. Yeah, so I think my first question would be, what went behind the decision to choose a board game as your kind of medium for, you know, your message? Because it seems like it's something that I wouldn't necessarily jump to when it comes to conservation, but you guys are like making it work. Obviously, it's like fantastic, like 160 species. That's amazing. But yeah, I'm kind of curious, like what went on to help you guys decide on a board game?
Well, I think it was just a meeting of minds. I don't know if we made a conscious choice to do it. It just happened.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And
okay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's such a good question. And you know, when you do something and you look back on it, you're like, how on earth did we get to here? I don't know, but it was during COVID, the first lockdown of COVID, and we were thinking about life and climate change and everything, and just feeling, you know, that was a really hard time for everyone. But we were talking about lots of different things, and then you've always been really passionate about board games, and you've made a few before, but just ones that we've played together, which I love. So I was saying, you know, make a proper one, like do it.
I think that's really where it came from.
And then and we were already really involved in conservation work, and it just happened to, like, the passion for both just merged into one thing.
Yeah, so I mean, my background is in engineering, so I was working on sustainability and sort of environmental engineering, but then Zara starting her job in conservation, and I've been doing these different board games, but just the two of us, and you basically said, well, we'd both been sort of just so excited about conservation and talking about it and thinking about it all the time, and you said, well, why don't you try and make a game about it? And then that's when it started, really. And it originally was 4 different parts of the world, but then when we moved to Botswana, it just became so clear that it should focus on Botswana, and the original version of the game wasn't such wasn't based on inspiring stories or hope in quite the same way. There were bad things that happened, and when I see other wildlife board games as well, that's often something that happens, that I've seen in them, that there's these sort of disaster events that could happen. But when we played it, we thought, oh, there's something not right here. It feels a bit too much like real life, that you just, you know, it's just doom and gloom, and that's and when we moved to Botswana, we're like, that's not the reality we're seeing. We think it's much more hopeful than that, and we just really believe that giving people a hopeful, inspiring story would make people more likely to want to get involved with conservation and nature. And that's why, we just wanted it to be very wholesome, a story about building up wildlife. Yeah. And that's where the game came from. And I think, as Zara says, it was never quite a like deliberate thing to set out and do it. It's kind of just happened.
It was our muse.
Awesome.
I don't know. I guess Botswana was our muse. And the original
it's a heck of a
version,
way to start your first game, I'll say that.
Right?
Sure.
Thank you. In the original version, there were things that could happen that would reduce protection levels. So global events, global warming or floods or something would happen. But when we play tested it, people were so sad when that meant that their animals died effectively and left their reserve. And we were also really sad when we played it. It was like really heartbreaking. So we decided to just, get rid of that stuff and just make it a positive tableau building game where you just build your reserve, and once it's in there, it's safe and it's sustainable and it's thriving.
Yeah, I think it also helps with that message of sustainability and sustainable growth as well. It's in the game, each species represents a sustainable population, but equally, when you're improving your habitat protection level, your poaching protection level, it's got to be done in a sustainable way. It's meaningless if that can disappear or in the next turn. And I think that's it's just so true of conservation and development as well, that it has to be done in a sustainable way, and otherwise it's meaningless. And it's all these subtle messages which are hidden behind the game, but we didn't want it to be too preachy, really. We just wanted it to subtly teach people about conservation and wildlife. And that's why it's so satisfying when, like you guys, you obviously, having worked in it and really understanding it, you pick up on some of these more subtle messages and things. So it's wonderful for us.
No, I will say, just because you said, the original version was, a bit more global with, more of like kind of a mosh pit roster. I know that this hasn't come out yet, but like, let's say like you're just like, we're going to do the same exact thing, but we're going to pick a spot in India or, the Northern Rockies in North America, or like the Grand Chaco region in South America. It's like, I'd buy that. It's the same game, but it's got like cool animals in different spots. Like, I'm definitely the type of person that would buy that. For sure.
We have like this dream in our minds that we could go and live somewhere in the Himalayas and develop a game based on that. But what we do want to do, if what we love about the game is that it reflects the realities in that region. So we would want, if there was anything in the future, although we don't know if we would do it, but if we did another expansion or something like in the Himalayas, we would ideally want to be there and learn about 100%. It and understand all the different systems and nuances so that we can capture them in the gameplay.
Definitely. Yeah. I think one of the things we've found looking back at the earliest versions of the game is how inaccurate some things were as well about the animals and the ecosystems, because they weren't ecosystems that we knew so much about, whereas having studied the ecosystems in Botswana for so long and working in conservation there, it meant that it could be so thematic and so rich and so realistic, whereas we feel that we couldn't do justice to another region. So if we were to do it, we would definitely want to go and spend probably months there and really study it, because we think it's only fair to do that, right? Rather than just cynically stick it on top.
We would want, I remember one weekend we were like, okay, we want to let's just do something with the grasses. And we went on a field trip to the central Kalahari and just gathered grasses for the weekend and then drew them into the game just to make sure that they were right. And that was just really fun. I just love being able to do that and being able to check things. And most of the artwork is based on photos that we've taken in the field or just on holidays or camping. So I don't know, it just feels like really special because of that. And it would be nice to be able to do the same in another region. So I'm just trying to justify a really long trip to the Himalayas at this point. But
no, it's a good segue, because I know Justin is our resident artist, but I did want to ask you, Matt, about kind of the art process. And Zara just said that it's a lot of photos that you took, but just kind of deciding how you wanted to represent certain things and the poses and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into that process.
Drawing all the animals took ages. It was a really long process, but I'm glad it was, because, well, for one, I got a lot better at it as I was doing it, and and it's nice to towards the end of the process to redraw some of the old ones and go, I'm proud of that now. Whereas looking back on some of them, I was like, that's not quite right, and it also gave us time to really study the animals and sort of really figure out the game as well by taking so long over it. It was so fun drawing all the different animals, and as Zara says, almost all of them were from our photos as well. Sometimes slightly imagined versions of the photos just to make them look a bit more dramatic or something. So it was a really fun process. But it took a long time.
It did indeed.
You have another question, Justin?
Yeah, so kind of similarly with the kind of the art that you made for it, what was your, I guess, medium for making it? Was it like digital art, or was it physical, like any kind of painting that you kind of took pictures of and then turned into digital art, or how did that kind of work?
So I was drawing it on like a drawing tablet. So yeah, it was all digital.
Nice.
Yeah, I think originally I was doing some of it by sketching, and then doing digital versions, and then this is back in the very early versions, and then Zara bought me a drawing tablet for my birthday, I think it was, and was like, right, do this properly, and it totally changed everything. So yeah, and it's been really fun. Been using that and sort of developing my skills using that as well. Yeah, it's a really good way to create stuff, actually.
That's awesome.
So I guess my next question, and maybe you haven't heard of this, but it is one that I really want to ask. Will the game eventually be on Tabletop Simulator on Steam? Because I want to stream it on our channel. I think that would be a really fun time.
That would be so fun.
Our Mesozoic siblings over at the Skeleton Crew do a lot of streams with the board game Holotype, so I figured that this would be, it would be a great thing for us to do. So, will it come to Tabletop Simulator?
Well, yeah, interesting. I did actually just had conversations about this today, so I'm not sure how much I can say really, but we will definitely have a digital version at some point. But we were slightly apprehensive about Tabletop Simulator because we were not sure we could do the game justice on Tabletop Simulator, because there's so much shuffling and passing hands of cards. We were worried that people might be accidentally throwing cards all over the place, or struggling to work it all out on Tabletop Simulator. But yeah, we will definitely have a digital version at some point, hopefully some point later this year, along with a retail release at some point later this year. So yeah, I think that's probably as much as we can say for now.
Yeah, that's so exciting that you want to play it online.
Yeah, no, you heard it here first, folks. So it's gonna happen. That means that we have no excuse not to do streams, and we'll probably do more than one because it's gonna be fun.
Amazing.
Oh, that'd be
I'm so glad
great.
you asked. Actually,
can you go in depth into every animal that you play, please, and then we can watch.
Yeah, we can do one of our classic 40 to 1 hour videos where we just sit there with the card instead of the animal walking around and playing the zoo.
Yeah.
No, but it is just, I guess part of the reason that I got so excited for this game is actually because it reminded me of something from my childhood that wasn't actually a board game, but it was a trading card game. And it had a lot of very similar elements in the sense that it was very conservation driven. And it had that concept of, even though you really like these big, important, charismatic species, they require particular needs, and those needs are usually greater than some smaller, more obscure animals. And so you have to build up your ecosystem before it's suitable for those larger animals. And I still have the collection right here. So it was a card game called Zico. Wow. And it had... before it got discontinued, it had about 3 sets. So there was Madagascar was the first one, and then they did Costa Rica, Indonesia, and Southwest China. But it was, even though it was a trading card game, it kind of played like a board game because you can see kind of those colors on the edges.
Yeah.
So you would place the card down and you would link cards. So if a card had... if 2 cards that had blue, you could put them together and you would kind of create this ecosystem grid in order to place. And so the colors would go up and up, and so then you had things like leopard has orange, and you'd have to work to get orange, and then eventually you'd have to get for example purple, which was the very high tier species. Let me see if I can find, there we go. Things like elephants, all purples and red. So that was kind of their way of building it up, and you guys kind of took the avenue of like, you need to have X number of this type place before you can place it. And so that comparison I really, really liked. And so it was just bringing me back to a very obscure trading card game from my childhood that I wish took off in the way that Magic the Gathering and Pokemon did, but unfortunately did not.
I wish I'd had it. It sounds
great.
Yeah, I know, that was I have some qualms with it because it was stupid hard to find the card, because this is like 2006, 2007. So online shopping was in its infancy, and like the only other places that you could buy cards was like a zoo. So it just had like a very limited supply chain, whereas things like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, those were available at every Walmart, and so it was a lot easier for people to give them to you as gifts. But another thing I really like about that game is actually because it's a trading card game and you got to have those rare cards, those chase cards, the rarity of the species in the wild reflected the rarity of the card. So things like the rhinos and the orangutans were super hard to get. Like, I don't have any of those because they were just so endangered, and so it really, it was a very cool chase driver for players. But I see a lot of those same conservation themes in those games, and so because Zico didn't take off as much as I would have liked, it makes me really want to do as much promotion for Kavango as I can, because I don't want to see that happen again. I have power now. I'm not gonna let it slide.
You just got me really excited. Story. I know, it's so good. You got me all reminiscent about Pokemon trading. Oh, the excitement of opening.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is it's like you still had battles, so it was energy based, and there was like some weird things. So I don't know what they decided on for like species energy and stuff, but you also had eco points, which is very similar to the points that you guys have for your species. And so it wasn't the player that had species with high energy wasn't necessarily the one who won. It was the one with more eco points, and the endangered species were worth more eco points. So it was about getting those more endangered species on the board and having more of them than your opponent. It was how you won the game.
Nice. Sounds great. I kind of really want to revive it. Get on eBay, see if we can find some.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so, good luck finding any boost. There's, the old starter sets where you know exactly which cards are in them, but that's all that's left, unfortunately.
Maybe
it was
you got the last
so obscure. I only found out about it because it was in the National Geographic Kids magazine that my parents had subscribed to me when I was little, and it was advertised a bunch in there. That's the only reason I knew it existed.
So have you been, for your whole life, have you been interested in nature and conservation?
Oh yeah, it's so funny too, because I've had a couple of interviews and small articles for my local hometown, and the interviewer he just wanted to ask, he's like, when was that key moment when you knew that you wanted to work in wildlife? And I said there wasn't one. It was always there, as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And he was really trying to drive me. He's like, you must remember something. I'm like, no. Before I was even conscious, it was there. You can ask my mom. Yeah. And sure enough, he did ask my mom, and she confirmed the same thing. And so, yeah, it's just always been there for me. And I've never really wanted to do anything else.
Brilliant.
That's so nice. Yeah, very inspiring.
Yeah, Justin, you got anything else you want to ask?
Let's see. Well, first off, it's not really a question. I'm just further amazed by the amount of research and depth of the game. The fact that you guys were we want to make sure these grasses are accurate, so we literally went there and collected them. That's incredible. Yeah. It's you're basically making a living herbarium, but no, I don't have another question per se. I just want to commend you guys on the amount of effort you put into it, because it's incredible. I think the amount of depth that it has is something that you don't see in any other board game. I think one of the only other animal board games I can think of Wingspan, but the fact that you guys have 160 species from a very specific region, whereas other games kind of just do pretty general, broad. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks so
thank
much.
you.
That really means so much, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's
on the plants as well. I was like looking through some of the plants, and I was like, I'm probably not going to know these plants, but when I was in Botswana, I had to take a natural history class where we did a bunch of plant ID, and I was like, oh no, I remember that grass, I remember that bush, I remember that. And so it was like a really good refresher for me, because
so
basically for one of our assignments we had to do basically what's called a Grinnell journal. So there was a natural historian called Joseph Grinnell, and he would do these journals whenever he went out on expeditions, where he would write down everything that he saw and the frequency of it, and then just like other notes and details. And so for our class, that was one of our assignments, was that we had to do one of those at each of the locations in Botswana that we were going to be at. And so that was the big thing, was the plants, and you needed to list 100 species minimum. So you couldn't just rely on doing all the big antelopes. You had to know your plants, you had to know your birds, you had to know your insects even. And so that was really good, where, I still have some of that knowledge, even though it's been, it's already been 4 years, which I can't believe it. It's been 4 years since I was there.
Do you think it's amazing though when you can be in a place and you just see everything that's there for you can see all the different grasses, you can hear all the different birds, knowing that they're different, knowing what they are. You can just see the entirety of something, and I feel like you could just stand in one spot anywhere in Botswana and just spend forever just looking and observing all the different things that were going on around you. I think as soon as we started delving into it, we just kind of got hooked on it as well. It's like the depth that's possible. There's just so much life in
It's one of the
that part
nicest
of the
things to
world.
do, isn't it? Just to stop and look around, and as soon as you stop, you just start seeing so many things.
Yeah.
And I think Justin, as you were saying, I think what you said is just so key to, I think what I see as being successful about the game is that, which wasn't how it started, is that we did just focus so solely on one region and the ecosystem and animals of one region, because it meant we could just go so in depth. And as you say, I think often with wildlife games, it covers lots of different areas, and it means it's not quite so thematic, because it doesn't necessarily fit together. It would be, you might have a snow leopard eating a battered fox, and you think, well, that's a bit weird, what's going on there? Or it will be just totally abstract. And we really wanted something that wasn't abstract, that wasn't just unrealistic. We just wanted it to be this recreation of real life. And so in some ways it feels like there was less creativity to it, because it was just really desperately trying to be as true to real life as possible and recreate that. And I think that's what's what's good about it, really. And so we've just tried to be as true as possible to real life and to real life conservation.
It reminds me a lot of when we had our interview with Ender and Ludi a couple weeks ago. That video is not up yet. It will be up soon, but it's not up yet. But their game Wild Savannah, they said the same thing, where they were doing something very Pan-African, and they were having things like gorillas interacting with great white sharks, and then they kind of brought it down to Savannah, Africa, and then even further, like, look, we just got to focus on Serengeti and what's in Serengeti, and it just made the development, they said, a lot smoother once they had done that. But, even then, it was just really cool, especially when I was doing all of the species search, because you would notice things where you're like, oh, they're focusing on this one area, but I think these species are a little bit too similar, so I don't think both of them are going to get in. Like a good example of that was the black-backed and the side-striped jackals. I was like, blackback's getting in. I don't see side-striped getting in, and I had that moment with the otters, and I saw the clawless otter on a lot of the trailer and the promotional material. I'm like, okay, so they're not going to pick spotted-necked otter. Like, this is the otter we're going to get. And then sure enough, I see a spotted-necked otter picture, and I'm like, oh, okay. And
We
and
love
then like
otters.
I think the other one
we're
was
slightly
the
biased,
rhinos, and that one I was worried that black rhino wasn't going to be in the game because it took me forever to find a photo of it. And I was like, but they're actually different because one's a grazer, one's a browser, and then sure enough I find it, and yep, it's like, yep, the same number of points, one's all trees, one's all grass, perfect.
Yeah.
That's so nice that you see all this. It's so lovely. You've been working for a long time without really anyone to share it with.
Yeah.
Just doing it because it was our passion and we love doing it. And then it's so nice to share it with people and talk about it. It's really fulfilling for us. So yeah, thank you.
It's going to be so satisfying for you when you eventually get to play it as well, because
I know.
a lot of people, when they start the game, they'll go, oh, I just had no idea what I was doing. But you'll go, right, okay,
You'll know.
I know if I'm going for trees, I'm aiming towards the
you'll
black
go.
rhino.
Yeah, well, I'm already thinking like, oh, what conservation expert is best if I want to set up this animal, and already starting to see those things. Like for example, I'm like, okay, ranger's really good if you want rhinos. Local leader seems really good if you want things like cheetah or painted dog because they need that high habitat protection and that sort of thing. So you're already thinking along those lines. It's like, oh, if you get to pick your conservation expert after you see the 2 C deck species that you draw at the beginning of the game, that's like a huge thing because it could affect your choice there. The rule book will be to time will tell for that, but
yeah. It honestly sounds like you've played the game about 30 times already.
I mean, I will say I watched the Box of Delights solo playthrough. I watched that quite a couple of times, not just for the project, but just understanding how the game played out in that regard. And I remember too, I think it was after your Meeple to Meeple interview.
Yeah.
That was when it was really kicking off, and you guys were like, all right, we're gonna have the one big stretch goal that we don't know if we're gonna reach, but you get 5 new animals.
I know.
And at this point I was like, well, Saddlebill's Stork's not in the game and I want it in the game. And how far do we have to go? I went back. Yeah, here it is.
It's so funny you say that. I just got it out. I was just looking through the cards to show you. But this is it. Here we are.
So all of our
thanks to you.
Kickstarter backers have you to thank for this one, Dominic.
Do you like it?
Yeah. But basically, when you announced like 5 new mystery animals, I was like, all right, I'm going back in. I ordered the Hemsbach t-shirt. I was like, I'm increasing, I'm doing my little extra part. So
amazing.
I'm getting a t-shirt. I'm getting 3 prints as well. Yep.
Oh, that's so kind.
Oh,
it was it was such a lovely thing about the campaign that I felt like we were just really in it with all of our backers. That everyone was just like in it together.
Yeah.
They were cheering us on all the time, and people were like, "Oh, we're on. What was it, Kick Track?"
Yeah,
like,
Kick Track.
Kavango's trending on Kick Track. Let's keep it trending. And then for like a day or two, like we were like really high up because I think everyone was just clicking on the link like again and again and again, and there was just this feeling of the people who got behind it just were so passionate about it, and honestly it meant so much. Frequently it was just like, people are being so nice. I just started like crying at home. It was just like so lovely and overwhelming.
I can confirm I was very invested as well, because I remember I think it was the last day, or it was gonna like expire that next day, and I was like watching it grow, and I was like, I don't know if we're gonna get to the last stretch goal, and I went to bed. And then I woke up and it was already done, and I was like, awesome. You don't have to wait until the last minute. I already know that it's all cleared up. And then I messaged you guys and I said, congratulations, you made it.
Yeah, I remember that. It was crazy.
We were just really silent on the comments because we were watching people being like, oh, will they make it? Oh no, they can't make it, it's too far. And then other people being like, well, they did make it quite quickly in the first 7 minutes. And then everyone was like, we were like, I don't know what we're gonna do. And then it just got over the edge, and it was so exciting. The first thing it got was £200,000, which was the stretch goal, and then it got over 3,000 backers. So that was just really like 12 hours of whirlwind emotion for us. We couldn't really believe it. So it was very exciting. And we just love all of our backers so much. It's hard to explain how much it means when you've just put your heart and soul into a project and it wouldn't exist. We don't know anything about the board gaming industry. Well, we do a bit more now, but when we started, we didn't. if it wasn't for a platform like Kickstarter, it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't be possible for us.
Yeah,
I feel like we just really want to say that it's just us. It's just the two of us. It's not, we wouldn't be able to do this without all of that support. So it really means a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard to convey that in a sincere way now, though, I think, because there's so much cynicism around these things, but it is really so true.
And it's been such an incredible proof of concept as well, because as just the two of us, the idea that this game would make it into shops the year after we'd done a Kickstarter is just it. In any other industry, I just don't know how you would possibly go about it, and yet Kickstarter has just given it a platform where they can come to us and they go, "Oh, you had a really good Kickstarter," and then they can go, "Well, we want to put it in shops," and you think, "Wow, this is incredible!" And it would be totally impossible without the support of thousands of people who just come across it and go, "Oh, that looks amazing," and it's just something we've really found with the game that when people play it, we just get although because we've been in Botswana, it's been difficult to reach as many people, but the people who have played it have absolutely loved it, and that we're growing this community of this, albeit a little bit smaller than some other games who are on Kickstarter, but they absolutely love it, and that's what's helping it spread, and that's been so nice for us that just people who have been so enthusiastic about it, and a bit like you, Dominic, being so enthusiastic and making the video, it's just it's just so
really
wonderful.
meant so much.
No, it's great. I mean, it just kind of blew me away as soon as I really looked into it, and I was like, I want this to happen. I want to play it. I think, like, for me, I backed, I think, after the reveal for the printed meeples that's when I turned in my first back, because this is my first time ever backing something on Kickstarter.
Oh, wow.
And I had looked I had contemplated it with a couple of video games, but I think as you were saying, Matt, like, Kickstarter's been a huge game changer. I think it's something that's worked out really well for board games in particular, because I think you're able to have this sense of security of, here is the finished product, we've already tested it, like, this is what it's going to look like, we just need to mass produce it. Whereas with a video game, this is our vision, but we still have to develop it, we still have to code it, all the money's going towards that.
It's much more tricky.
Who knows, something could happen and it gets scrapped, and then as a backer, you're just, what do I do? And so I do think that that's something that really does help a board game avenue get funded rather than a video game avenue in that regard.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And we're ready to print now, so we made a few changes based on the stretch goals, and we've got the screen printed animeeples, which look amazing. So all the stretch goals were great, and a lot of them were suggested by our backers, which was really helpful. So they're great. Yeah, they all look really good, and the climate mini expansion looks really good.
With the saddlebird stalk.
And all the extra animals, and our special desert adapted animals, which is a tribute to Namibia. So it's, really exciting.
Anything you want to show off from the prototype at all?
Well, we'll show you the box, shall we?
Yeah, go on. You've got it next to you, so you show it off.
Try and get it around the microphone.
The microphone shot.
So Matt did a great job, I think, on the art.
Definitely.
Of the box, upgrading it. So before the sunset wasn't there. So I think it really draws the eye, which is really nice. And the river was added too, which is actually some really helpful. We sat down with the local artist and just had chats with her. Her name's Claire Cousins, and we tag her a lot in our things, and she just gave us some great tips. It was just really nice to speak to someone who also had a creative eye. And now it like wraps around, so the vista kind of wraps around the whole.
And on the bottom we've got the agama, and on the side the black-footed cat.
So the box, I think, is just beautiful. We love it. Really happy with it. And the inside of the box is also going to be lined with a pattern.
Oh yeah, this is one of the stretch goals.
You can see, I don't know if you can see the pattern with the lighting here, but it's kind of a triangular pattern.
You can kind of see it.
Well, this is another stretch goal I've got here. Is the it's difficult to get it on the camera, but it's the illustrated map, and this was a really nice thing to add, and a really nice thing to draw actually, because it's highlighting all the different national parks and the different landmarks of the region. So one of the bits of feedback, I just moved the microphone, I don't know if you could hear us. One of the bits of feedback we had from backers was that they really wanted to hear more about the story and about the region. And yeah, it was really nice to add this in. So people have got like a visual things are often better than written, aren't they? So people can look at this and learn more about the region, hopefully visit and get engaged with the conservation in Kavango. So yeah, that was a really nice thing to add.
Yeah, I don't know what else we could say. Like, it's plastic free, which is really important to us.
Yeah.
Hopefully as low impact as possible. We've thought a lot about it and how we can design it so it doesn't do any harm.
Been very careful the material.
We've been very
use,
careful, and Matt's designed these specific card boxes, card tray holders, and they, again, it's like this recurring pattern. Which this is the pattern that was on the inside of the box, but you can tell with the lighting. But this is in the deluxe version, or these sort of pre-made ones. In the standard one, you put them together yourself.
Yeah, but
similar purpose.
In both versions, the idea is that the card trays double up as a box organizer as well. So it was just carefully designing it so people aren't going to go away and first thing they do is order lots of plastic parts to sort the box for them. Yeah, it was thinking, right, how can we design it so that doesn't need to happen? So all the cardboard things fit really nicely in the box, because it's such a big thing with board games that you order your plastic box organizer separately now, and you buy it for the same price you bought the board game for. So we're like, right, no, let's just make it fit perfectly and all made out of our recycled cardboard. And that was where Matt's engineering skills came very, very handy. He's hand designed everything, so it's completely bespoke design from him on all of it. So everything fits in in the box. And it's all been hand designed, and none of it's kind of standard issue. So it's been really exciting, and it looks great. But we wanted it to not have any plastic. We hope that people understand why. So we won't have the film around the outside of the box. We'll just have stickers that hold the box shut in place when you buy it. And with the cards, it's just a paper band as well around the cards, rather than the shrink wrap on the different decks of cards as well. Yeah. Do you want to contribute?
No, I think the map's a really good touch as well. And Zico actually, for all of their starter sets, they had maps as well. But what I really like about yours is not only do you show the different animals and where they are, but you also highlight certain protected areas and have a list of those. So, just read through, it's like, you have Okavango, Central Kalahari, but you even go out and there's Kafui, Lua Plain, Mana Pools, all these all these bucket list locations for any wildlife enthusiast in Southern Africa. But I think it also just brings that deeper connection of just recognizing how biodiverse this area is, but also just the different countries involved and how vast it can really get. And it's part of why I love Kaza so much is all of that coming together. And I think the map does a really good job of that with all the boundaries and the park locations.
Yeah, I think that's so well put. I think it's so important that is this sort of transboundary area where you've got so many different countries coming together and working together on conservation. And I think notably, one of the things you were working on with elephants, it's just incredible. And I think it is just such an inspiring story, because it's just something, growing up in the UK, we just can't relate to that. All these countries coming together to work on how elephants are going to move, even though they have such a big impact on the environments, the living spaces. Just fascinating.
Yeah, It's really amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something with elephants, especially like the part I was in. I was in that part of Botswana where the elephant population is so dense. It felt like you saw more elephants than impala at times. In all honesty, and you're just seeing like I think the second or third elephant that I saw was raiding a maize field in Senkoyo village, and then you're just walking and you're like, oh, there must have been a storm that blew through here, and your instructor says, nope, that's elephants, and then you go turn a bend around the road, there's a tree knocked down, takes you, an hour and a half to get it off the road so you can pass, and then you come back the next day and there's another tree down in the same exact spot because the elephant just doesn't want you to go there. And yeah, it's really not something you can understand until you've been there.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to imagine. I remember thinking that when I first went to the Kavango Delta, for example, I just thought I could never have imagined this. It was beyond my experience up until that point, just that abundance, and I don't know, it was just unimaginably beautiful. It's just, and also the interactions between people and wildlife are so foreign as well, I think, to, at least for our experience in the UK and urban living. And all of that, so it was just it's a really special place, and hopefully people will be encouraged to visit it as well if they play Kavango and think that they
I think this is definitely, hopefully it's a very educational experience. I think it's going to be educational if people decide to look at it that way. I think, was it you guys said, because you tested it at University of Botswana, right?
Yeah.
That's
and you were saying there they were noticing the very educational side to the management and the conservation, whereas when you were testing it in Europe, people saw it more as a entertaining game.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can have more of that education side get bridged to people that aren't there. But I think it's definitely got the potential for it if you're able to look and approach it that way.
Yeah, and kind of building off that, one thing that like you guys were to mentioned earlier is that when you're looking, it's great to go outside and when you can kind of see like the whole system, but then see each little piece of that system, and that's something that like as a biologist or just a wildlife enthusiast, you kind of reach that point of knowledge that you obtained throughout time. And like when I was in a botany class, we'd go out in the woods like a week later. And I'd be like, hey, I know that flower, I know that flower, I know like all this, whereas before you'd be like, oh, there's flowers, but now you can start to like pick them out. Yeah. And so I think you guys are really capturing like the biologist kind of perspective, or even just, the wildlife hobbyist perspective of, seeing each piece of the system and the system itself, which I think is, it's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
That's such a nice insight.
Yeah. That's exactly what we were trying to do.
It's really well put.
Yeah, really well put. Beautifully put. Yeah, I think that's really what we're trying to do. It's funny because also when people visit us, they play the game and then they'll be like, oh, that's a sausage tree. I'm like, yeah, it is, because they recognise it from the game. Also, the sausage tree is such a crowd pleaser. Everyone's like, does this really exist? And you're like, yes, it does. So it's like things like that, and I think also it helps people even with the birds, identifying that we've seen that too, that there's a swift in the game. No, there's not. There's a swallow in the game. Or here I am. There's a swallow in the game, and people will be able to be like, oh, that's a swallow rather than a swift. Or the lilac-breasted roller is so iconic, but you might see it and just not know what it was. But if they've played the game, then they now recognise it from that. I think it just builds familiarity with all the different biodiversity, and we've seen that play out, and it's been really satisfying. We would love it to be in the field as well, so we'd love the game to be in lodges or in campsites or with the field researchers. So that they could...
One of our dreams is, University of Botswana have said that they want to use it in helping teach their environmental sciences program, and we just really feel like this would be such an achievement. It would be so wonderful if they do.
They've been so amazing and so supportive. So hopefully.
Yeah, that was one of the things too with the birds, is I was like, lilac-breasted roller it's just so iconic when you're there. I mean, the colors on it, Woodland kingfisher was another one for me that, you know, because it just says kingfisher. I'm like, that's a woodland. I know the look, I know the sound. That's exactly what it is.
Oh, I love that sound.
Yeah.
We have one in our garden.
Yeah.
In the season when it migrates. You know, the seasons are changing when you hear it.
You always hear that noise when you're just sitting out on the deck and no, it's I have a lot of unfinished business in Southern Africa. You know, I know that the pandemic was the reason that you kind of brought you guys together to make this game, but you know, that's when I was there and had to leave, unfortunately. But you know, so hoping to get back there.
Yeah, you will.
Definitely.
You definitely will.
I know. But yeah, I think that's everything I have. Justin, do you have anything else, or do we want to let them go?
I think that's everything I have too.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, it's been wonderful chatting to you.
That was really good.
Is there anything you want to ask us, I guess?
Oh, well, I could ask you so many questions about what you're working on. Justin, you said you're doing education. Is that linked to biology? I just want to know what you're both doing. I find it so interesting.
Yeah, so in the past I've done research technician work, so it's been a lot of like reading scientific papers, compiling data and all that. And right now I'm kind of moving towards doing some like substitute teaching kind of stuff. So kind of that area of education. And then I do a lot of talks throughout my kind of city or town where I talk about wildlife and like classrooms and stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to be doing more of that with a teacher that was actually my second grade teacher. So
that's so great.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. And you know, trying to transition it more towards wildlife education, but currently it's right now just in general education.
Amazing.
And then for me, I currently work for the state wildlife agency in New York. And so I'm responsible for, my technical term is as a fur bearer technician, but that's most of the small and medium-sized carnivores, as well as a couple other things like beaver and muskrat, basically the species that people trap for the fur market. So my job is ensuring that all those populations are sustainable and that, you know, there's not any issues collaborating with environmental conservation officers for poaching, as well as just doing research and monitoring on those populations. So we finished a 5-year study on fishers, which is a large marten-like weasel. So we finished that in 2022. And right now we're collaborating with Cornell University on some bobcat stuff. So we're doing a big statewide bobcat survey.
Amazing.
So that's been a lot of fun, but I've been doing this job for a year and a half about. So then, you know, before that I was out west doing pronghorn, and before that was mountain lions, and so bounce around a lot tends to be the thing in this field. But I'm hoping that I can find a master's project soon, and I'd like to end up back in Africa, because it's kind of, as we said at the beginning of this talk, just the collaboration and the people and that idea and tolerance of wildlife is just so much better to work with than it is in the West. People are, as you guys are talking about with the fox in your garden, the number of calls I get every week. Somebody complaining about a fox in their neighborhood. It's sad, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 5 kilogram animal that they think is gonna, you know, attack all the children in the neighborhood, and you've got to talk them down out of that. So
it's really tough. Oh, you're doing a great job though. That's amazing. We were thinking about bobcats recently, weren't we?
Yeah,
what was
featuring in the
World Wildlife Photographer of the Year.
We love the World Wildlife Photographer of the Year, and there was a big, it was the Photojournalism Award, I think, was
on bobcats in
the
the US.
It was in Texas, wasn't it?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Oh, was it Ben Masters? Was that his name?
I can't remember who it was, actually.
Okay.
It might. I know Ben Masters has done a lot of cat conservation work in Texas with because of the mountain lion situation there, where they're getting over harvested by hunters, and also Texas is the only state left that has a breeding population of ocelots. So that's very exciting. They're trying to establish a second breeding population there. One of my friends is actually working on that project, so it's really exciting to see that recovery happening there with an animal that you don't associate with the United States at all.
No.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh, thanks so much for your time. It's been really amazing speaking to you, and thank you for having us.
And keep up the good work.
It's great having you guys as well, and I'm happy that we were able to make this work, and it's definitely something that, as we said, you know, I'm definitely going to be playing my copy whenever it releases, and you know, the digital version is definitely going to be something that we want to stream. So,
oh, amazing! Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks, guys.
All right. Well, that said, we're the Wildlife Wire, signing off.
See you next time.